Up to 1,200 Twitter employees reportedly calling it quits in the wake of Elon Musk's ultimatum. He demanded longer hours and a high-intensity workload. This as the tech titan begins reinstating previously banned accounts, including Kathy Griffin and Jordan Peterson. Here now to react, founder of Strive Asset Management, author of Nation of Victims, Vivek Ramaswamy. Vivek, great to see you this morning. You're familiar with the tech sector. Was the work culture at Twitter unique, or is this Silicon Valley in a nutshell? This seemingly, and look, I don't want to pass judgment from too far a distance here, but seemingly very cushy world, work from home, free movie, or free lunch, smoothie bars, whatever it may be, and now all of a sudden Elon's demanding real work.
That's a circumstance that's changing across Silicon Valley in real time, Will. But the problem is, over the last 10 years, times have almost been too good in our culture and in Silicon Valley in particular. Money raining from on high like manna from heaven from the Federal Reserve has fueled a decade-plus long bull run in technology stocks that's led to hiring booms across these companies, monopoly-like businesses generating great cash flows. That is slowly changing. You're now seeing Facebook's business model under pressure. They're firing employees. They're taking away perks. It's really not that different at Twitter either. And it's funny, there's two parallel discussions here right at Twitter, Will, right? One of them has to do with free speech and disagreements about operating the company's core product as a free speech platform. But the other is a totally separate issue that is a culture of laziness bred from entitlement, which was in turn bred from a culture of excess in the tech sector over the last 15 years under great financial conditions.
Yeah.
And what you're seeing a lot of employees do is use the former issue, their disagreement on the free or alleged disagreement on the free speech question, to actually just have one more excuse not to actually work hard towards achieving the company's
I do see
mission.
a thread, though. Vivek, I do see a thread, and you used the word. The thread is entitlement. I'm entitled to this work schedule. I'm entitled to this laziness. I'm also entitled to silence you. Let's go to that for a moment. Let's go to that culture of censorship. So Musk tweeted the following, asking whether or not President Trump should be reinstated. 53% yes, 47% said no. Amazingly, 8 million people have voted cast a response to that poll. Hey, I think Elon's in a tough spot here, Vivek. I mean, he's already starting to talk like he's embracing some level of content moderation. He tweeted out about essentially shadow banning, turning people down that he said will be hateful or negative. I don't know who defines hateful or negative, but I think we need to be a little careful here. Is the new boss the same as the old boss when it comes to free speech?
Yeah, look, my advice to Elon Musk is to stick to your mission and vision and be unapologetic about it. I do think that the wave of advertisers leaving the platform has applied some financial pressure. I do think that the activists and the social activists and the civil rights groups that he's met with have added some pressure, where Elon, I think, has tempered the vision of operating this as a free speech platform to instead moving to this model of centrist content moderation and censorship, to say that, okay, it's not going to be as biased against conservatives, but we're still going to move it just closer to the center. Personally, I think that is the wrong way to go. I think there are clean rules of the road to say that there's certain types of content moderation that you need. Keeping spam, porn, the kinds of things that aren't political expression or viewpoint expression, but you need off the site, great. That's what content moderation's for. But for the rest of it, there's no viewpoint discrimination. Give choice back to the user, and that should be the rules of the road. So I do think he's at a fork in the road. He's got a lot of pressure on him, but I hope he stays the course to the true North Star of making it a free speech platform, not a centrist censorship platform.
Well,
instead.
that's a really good way of framing it. It was sold as a his takeover was sold as a free speech platform, and now it's, as you described it, a centrist moderation platform, or that's what it's looking like it's going to end up. Really quickly, you have a new op-ed at the Wall Street Journal. The new woke discrimination demands a new law. Expand civil rights acts to protect employees from being fired for their political beliefs. Vivek, I'll be honest with you, I'm a little wary anytime we start talking about expanding protected classes. But you make the argument that political belief should be also a political class or a protected class in the workplace.
So I'm leery of it too, Will, but here's what I say. You can't have it both ways. If you can't fire somebody because they're black or gay or Muslim or white or Christian or whatever, then you should not be able to fire them just because they're an outspoken conservative or an outspoken liberal, for that matter. You cannot have it both ways. And the argument I make in this piece is that it was actually the original protected classes in the first place, race, sex, etc., that were expansively interpreted to say that that means you can't even say certain things that offend members of those protected classes, that created the conditions for viewpoint-based discrimination while leaving viewpoint-based discrimination unprotected. And so I wrote this piece with my former law professor, Jed Rubenfeld. It's a point that I think could actually be part of a Republican agenda that is unifying. The GOP, in my opinion, is a party in search of an agenda. Well, here's a unifying opportunity. Biden said he wanted to unify the country. Great. Say that if you're going to have protected classes at all, political expression fits on the list. Make it a civil right to say that we may disagree with you, but you still get to say it without fear of putting food on the dinner table. That is, I think, an opportunity to unify the country around the idea that you can both pursue the American dream and the First Amendment at the same time. And then, Will, if you're like me or you could say, fine, get rid of protected classes altogether, and that would be fine. But given that that's not going to happen, this is the fix that we need. Okay, well, I need to be sold, and so that means I'm going to be reading this piece in the Wall Street Journal, just like everyone at home should be as well. Vivek, always enlightening. Thank you so much.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.